Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let Grow's monthly webinar. This is a new series we started in 2022, and we're having a wonderful time talking to all kinds of fascinating people who have kids' interests and independence at heart. I'm the executive director of Let Grow, and I'll be moderating the webinar, which mainly means I handle the technical duties and the housekeeping. Our format is an informal interview discussion, and we'll leave the last 15 minutes or so for questions from the audience. Everyone will remain on mute, but you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen at any time to enter questions that you'd like us to address. We also encourage you to use the chat for comments and discussions, and we'll probably share some links to resources along the way. This webinar is being recorded, and we will send you a link to both the recording and the chat log later today, which we also will encourage you to share with others and will be available on our website in our archives. Let Grow is most widely known for our programs, the Let Grow Project and the Play Club, and our resources and support for parents through our website, letgrow.org, and our Facebook group, Raising Independent Kids. We believe there are as many ways to learn as there are students, and while we don't take a stance or endorse specific school curriculum, we believe that kids need to have real experiences in the real world, and that's why we are excited to present From Passionate to Passive, What Makes Kids Care. With that, I'm going to pass this over to our president and co-founder, Lenore Skenazy, to get started. Hold on.
There we go. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrea. And
You're
I think you're going to have to do that with our guys here.
I think I'm going to have to unmute our other two too. So
right. So as Andrea said, our whole belief here is that kids can do so much more than our culture is giving them credit for, and sometimes that our schools even let them do. And so we have with us these two amazing education iconoclasts who very much believe in thinking outside the box, outside the school, and outside the culture in terms of what kids can be asked to do and how they can rise to the occasion. So let me introduce them. Chris, Become Human. There you are. Great. Hi, Chris. So Chris Balme, I'm reading here, obviously, is an education leader, writer, and school founder, passionate about helping young people discover more of their human potential. Right on. As co-founder and head of school at Millennium.School, a lab school in San Fran, Chris helped pioneer new learning methods for middle schoolers based on developmental science. Chris then founded Argonaut, an online program to bring social emotional learning to more students. He received the Ashoka Fellowship, I hope to get one too someday, as a leading change maker in education, and regularly speaks, trains, and writes for parents and teachers around the world. His book, okay, he's got a book, let's plug it, Finding the Magic in Middle School, is coming out in August. Good luck on that. That means you're still writing it now, right?
Just finished the final edits, and now all the million other stages starting from there. So thank you so much, Lenore.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope the rest of it goes smoothly. Okay, so Matt, look, there he is. So on the business side, Matt Beaudreau is a speaker and has consulted with everyone from Wells Fargo to Honeywell, Lockheed Martin, American Eagle, Cedars-Sinai. That's a big stretch already there. American Eagle to Cedars-Sinai. Sorry, that's New York for you in the background. What can I say? I live in the city. And he also consulted with the Air Force, which it sounds like we might need. Matt has a reputation for being a provocative thought leader in educational and personal development practices. He's a two-time featured TEDx speaker and was named Corporate Trainer of the Year by none other than Stanford, maybe because he's talked to about 250,000 people across the world. That's amazing. I want to do that too. But he's also big in the education world. In 2017, Matt founded Acton Academy Placer. Placer, which is spelled like placer, drives me crazy. And it's in California, an alternative method of education that utilizes the Socratic method, which emphasizes self-direction and cultivates confident, independent young people with a strong sense of character and personal responsibility. Building on his experience with the Acton model, Matt co-founded, this is another hard word to say, Apogee?
Yes, ma'am.
Apogee Strong. Remember, so one of them is Acton and Apogee, and one of them is Ashoka and Argonaut. And we're just going to ask you that at the end. So Apogee Strong in 2021. It's a mentorship program designed for young men from 12 to 22 to take on challenges presented by men who've come before them in order to learn to lead. It's a rite of passage through mentorship, action, and self-discovery so young men can become true leaders. So welcome, both of you guys.
Thanks,
I'm really happy you're here. small crowd out there, but as you know, this gets distributed afterwards too. So, basic question that I think anybody would wonder is like, you guys both started schools. That sounds so daunting and frankly awful. What made you do it? What made you start a totally new school? And Chris, you can go first.
Okay, thanks, Lenore, and thanks everyone for being here. Yeah, it is a bit of a crazy process. I think the most honest answer is because I didn't like my own schooling. And, my journey through middle and high school was one where I got increasingly disconnected and felt less and less able to be myself or even clear what that was. I thought that was totally normal. That seemed the way that most things went until I got to college and started wondering about, I guess, is that the way it has to be? I think that was the question that started it for me. And while I was in college, I wrote this kind of utopian dream of here's what I think school could be, should be. And then the dream got, shelved for a long time. Other projects came. And about 10 years after I graduated, it kind of knocked back on my door. And I realized, for me, I think our culture really struggles with adolescents in particular. We often don't know what to make of them. Are they just being resistant? Are they trying to be difficult? Should we just back away, or do we need to control them more? And I wanted to find a better way to understand adolescence. So, a very long story short, we went on this 3-year journey of essentially trying to understand developmentally, and working with universities, working with neuroscientists and psychologists, what is really going on in adolescent development, and how could we build a school that would work with those developmental drives that need to be independent, to figure out how to relate to people, to feel a sense of purpose and contribution.
Purpose, yep.
Yeah, what if that was what school was about? Really helping them meet
How weird.
those developmental needs. Yeah, how weird would that be? And so that's why we built it, to do an experiment, essentially. And I could say much more, but that's the genesis.
All right. Frustrated with your own experience, it sounds like, in middle school, and trying to figure out if science had something to say about science, and maybe anthropology, about how to reach kids and tap into their potential as opposed to driving them crazy, for instance.
Thank you. That was a wonderful way to encapsulate it. Yes.
Wow. All right. How about you, Matt? You've started a bunch of schools, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we have I have a few, and help entrepreneurs start, all over the world. So I've had the opportunity to do this more than once. And unlike Chris's journey, I loved school. Right. I got I had the straight A's all throughout, and I figured out the game, early on, and the social part, and, sports and girls, and really sports and girls, right? Like that's it. That was
and
it.
Yet you also
right?
got A's. It's really annoying.
And got the A's, but it was just because I figured out the game. So I loved, and this is part of the problem. So I love school, got my straight A's in college, but I came out from that and went, cool, I still have no idea who I am. I have no idea what I can do. I have no idea what I can offer the world. And I think that's the story for so many people. And to me, that was, kind of the beginning of breaking the illusion that school was always doing the right thing. I had done all the things I was supposed to do and still didn't have a job waiting for me, and my purpose and passion and all that stuff. I still didn't have that stuff figured out, right? Even though I had done the game, quote unquote, perfectly. So for me, that was a part of it. And then I got into education early. I was working at Stanford and started to see the game. So I started out working for the controller's office, but I started doing some corporate training there, and started working with every department there. So I got to work with the students, the parents, the staff, the faculty. I really got to work with everybody and kind of see the ins and outs. And as I met, obviously brilliant humans, but I started to see the game for what it was. A lot of those young people were much smarter than me, but also had nothing figured out. They were playing this game. And so I went into education, and of course was a public school teacher, an administrator, a private school teacher, administrator. And I'm seeing these games play out, and I'm still getting that same feeling like, look, we're just not doing right by these young people, and of course at that time I started having my wife and I started having our own children, and organically the speaking career took off. And all of my thoughts around that were reinforced as I'm working with these Fortune 500 companies who are going, Matt, we want you to come in and help us out. We've got all these Harvard and MIT and Stanford and, you know, all these graduates that we've hired, the best, right? And they suck. We want to fire all of them. They know how to play school, but they don't have any transferable anything to what we want to do. Can you help us not fire them? Right. And so all of those things, and I'm looking at my own children that I'm raising, and I'm going, there's just no way. I've got to do something else to fix my own situation first. I want to help my kids first. Yeah. And then if anybody else in the community will join us, that's great. You know, and luckily that definitely took off and is continuing to take off. So we get to keep opening more real centers for education. I don't even like to call them schools, you know, real centers for education.
It's okay,
I differentiate the two. So, yeah.
Right. So what's interesting is that, you know, I've seen that in my own house too. It's like you graduate from school and you don't know anything about the real world because you've had to concentrate so hard on your real world has been succeeding at school. So right. The other things that one has to succeed at in life have been, you know, not on the horizon yet. So tell me a little bit about how, I mean, why I brought you both together. And I have a feeling that you guys are different in many different ways, possibly even politically, but you both see something that I see, which is that there's so little real world that the kids get to interact with, in part because school is hard and takes a lot of time, and in part because we're so afraid of our kids being out in the world. They could get hit by cars, they could get abducted, they could get hurt, disappointed, and parents and adults are often required to be watching over them. I mean, even if you want to let your kids do things on their own, there are all sorts of legal reasons and social norms that prevent you from leaving even a soccer practice. So tell me about how you've come up with ways of getting kids into the real world to find their way. And now I'm not even going to say who talks first. You guys have to figure it out. You're in the real world of the webinar, so you figure it out.
Chris, after you, sir.
Okay, thanks. And Matt, I'm so curious your answer to this. You know, I'll share a couple of things. So one, within the school environment, you know, a lot of schools get really isolated where they kind of become a walled fortress or an island, you know, pick your metaphor, and whether for reasons of fear or just how many mandates are loaded onto schools, all the things they're supposed to take care of for our society.
Right.
They don't ever let kids out or really bring the world in. So I think from the perspective of someone within a school, the first step is to start making those boundaries more porous. You know, let people come in and let the kids out. So at Millennium, you know, a simple kind of structure.
Wait, so
that we
Millennium
created.
was a middle school. Just explain.
Thank you. Yeah. So middle school, the middle school I started in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. You know, a simple structure we created was on Wednesday, every afternoon, we're out of here. So we're on field trips. We're visiting businesses, we're visiting nonprofits, artists, engineers, you name it, everyone that we could possibly find. And when we ask kids the best part of their middle school experience, usually that's what they say.
You know, that was an easy guess.
Yeah, that was an easy guess.
Everybody remembers their field trips. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The bus alone was so fun. Yes.
And as another twist to that, they go in their advisory groups. And so that's a group of 10 students who see each other every day from the first day of middle school to their graduation. And so they have a group, a team that they're on an adventure with, and they have ups and downs. You know, they take the wrong bus line, they miss the field trip.
Oh, wait, so they find their own way?
They find their own way.
Oh, that's
as they get older, they get to choose and plan their own field trips. They've got a small budget, $75 for 10 kids. So you got to be really frugal, thoughtful about that. They map out the transit. They're in charge of writing the thank you notes, you know, all the stages. So I'll put that out there as one on the school level, and I can say more from a parent perspective, but I want to hear what Matt has to say, and I can jump in more.
That's very cool, man. No, I love to hear that. You know, Acton by definition, the way we do things, it is very, very experiential. You know, people ask, what is the curriculum for Acton Academy? And I always tell them the curriculum is self-awareness, because you've actually tried a number of things, so you know what you like and what you don't like, and what you're good at and what you're not good at. And it's self-confidence because you've actually done hard things. You've taken on some challenges.
Give me an example of something that they've done that's sort of real worldy that they can see if they like or don't like or are good at.
Well, sure. From day one, they are working within we call them studios instead of classrooms, and they are setting the contract of character behavior for what is going to go on right there. So if all of us, in this room right now are in that studio together, we're going to work together and figure out, okay, here's our contract, here's where we're going to be. And then the minute Lenore and I are having a conversation, but Chris decides he's going to jump in and interrupt or whatever, and he's going to go get that contract, right? So you and I, Lenore, or anybody else in this room, the students, the heroes, the learners are going to be tasked with being the ones to hold the lines, and hold those boundaries, right? We're going to have the adult conversations, have something tangible to go back to. So, I mean, it starts right from the foundation. And then we start to collaborate on things like, I'm going to have my individual goals, and maybe Chris is my running buddy. So Chris is going to hold me accountable to those goals. I'm going to continue to share my own personal goals. And then the three of us are going to collaborate on real world experiences. We're going to take on projects and quests that have, a real world outcome attached to it, whether it's starting a business, whether it's creating a rocket and testing different fuels and competing against other students doing the same thing. We're going to take on real experiences, and we're going to take on real responsibilities. So we're going to have responsibilities in our studio, on campus. Go ahead.
Real rockets? I mean, has anybody made a real rocket?
Sure. Yeah, on a small scale. Yeah, absolutely. Right. On a small scale.
Not the stomp rocket.
Real rockets, real businesses, making real money, and putting on real plays, putting on real performances. We want the experiences to be the educational opportunity. There is no, those things are one and the same. So we want as many experiences as possible. If I was going to ask you what your favorite food was, but I've only ever let you taste 5 foods, well, you're going to pick out one of those 5. But if I bring you to a buffet every single day and you just get to taste from all over the place, and then you get to bring your own unique and go, oh man, I love tacos, but I love, the Korean barbecue too. I'm going to put those together, right? You start to be able to create as well, because you've just got a vast amount of experiences. That's what Acton is all about.
Oh, wow. It sounds so fun. And also now I'm a little hungry, but so this is jumping ahead just because we don't have that much time, but you guys both do, you've come up with the thing that drew me to both of you is that you both have these like ideas and challenges outside of school that you give kids a list of to go and decide what they want to try, which reminds me of, the Let Grow project is where you get a homework assignment and you go home and you have to do something on your own that's new that you kind of want to do, but for some reason you haven't done it yet. And you have to do it without your parents. And that gets the parents to let go, and it gets the kids to go on, some kind of journey, heroic or not. It just could be to go get candy. But there was a list that Chris made. And I know, Matt, you too have a list of projects that you give the young men in your Apogee group. Yes, so Chris, my favorite one from your list, and I think you know which one it is you have so many things that kids can do, but one of them is go someplace where you either stick out or don't fit in. What is it?
Yeah, exactly.
What is it exactly?
Yeah. Join a group where you stick out.
Join a group. So tell me why that's on the list and whether anybody's ever chosen it and how it went.
Yeah. So as you said that, I'm thinking of a student who is a good swimmer and had noticed that after whatever time he was joining the pool, there was a session for, I guess, elderly people to swim. And so he decided in order to meet that challenge, he was going to join the elderly swimmers and found it was a really interesting experience connecting with people he'd always kind of passed in the halls, but never actually had an actual conversation with. So they
probably thought he was the cutest thing on earth.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I loved him. So yeah, this is called the Essential Experiences Project. And essentially, it started with this question of asking people, when you look back on your middle school years, what do you actually remember, first of all, because we forget, a lot of it's forgettable. Unfortunately, it doesn't have
a lot of it should be forgotten, but okay.
Yeah. What do you actually remember that is positive and that still helps you or shapes you in some way? And so we asked hundreds of people this question. Sometimes, folks who had just graduated from middle school, so they were only a few years out, all the way to, elderly folks. And we just started compiling answers and then looking for answers that came up again and again. And we came to a list of about 50. which is not intended at all to be the end of answering that question, really just the beginning. But
wait, a list of 50 things that people remembered from middle school?
yeah, 50
Like
experiences.
getting beaten up or, or getting lost. I mean, like what kept coming up that was sort of good?
Yeah, so they're all positives. So 50
Oh,
things that happen that still somehow shape your sense of who you are. So it could be, I started a business, to your point, Matt, in middle school, and there are kids who or adults now who talk about that, or the experience of joining a team, the experience of becoming friends with someone who is over 75. It's one that came up. The experience of facing something difficult, like a conflict, and learning how to resolve and persevere through it. All the way to very simple things like the experience of starting a diary or keeping a journal and having be a habit that has lasted maybe for your whole life. That's true for me. The experience of cooking a complete meal for someone, all the courses, all the work, the experience of growing food from scratch, from seed, and seeing that entire process, that it's not just something that comes in a plastic box at the grocery store. So we got these 50 together, and we printed them on playing cards. So it became kind of a game, something that a student can take on for themselves. Just, this one speaks to me. It could be something that you challenge a friend with. Sometimes a parent might suggest some, but then the parent has to receive one too, because we're not done with these either. And so it's been a really fun, playful way. The list is always growing. Students are adding more and more to it, but essentially it's a whole alternative curriculum for middle school. And there are times where I feel like, I'm not saying that you need to throw out the academics, but what if these experiences were put on an equal playing field? These are the things that actually help you figure out who you are. And the academics are also important, but let's not ignore the rest of it.
It's true. It feels like the teeter-totter is really weighted towards the academic side, and all these things that people were remembering about, their growth and realizing what they love and who they are and what they could be good at. When I finally realized I was funny was middle school. That doesn't even matter often, because the academics are so important and measured, and these other things aren't.
Yeah. And, really great teachers know how to weave the two together. So it's they're not really in opposition. It just kind of appears that way when we're first trying to stretch our minds to hold both.
Right. My book, Free Range Kids, my book is dedicated to my 7th grade teachers. So for sure, you can do both. Matt, how about you? The real world, what kind of projects are you giving young men to, and why?
Yeah, the Apogee is based very similarly off of it's an experiential kind of thing. So they have a new challenge and a new project every single month that they're taking on, along with the mentorship calls and all of that. So they do everything from interviewing multiple CEOs and law enforcement officers to the paperclip challenge to
wait, stop. I love the paperclip challenge, and I had gotten it wrong. I thought it was like counting the number of Holocaust victims. So tell us, that's another paperclip thing. So tell us about the paperclip challenge.
Yeah, so paperclip challenge, the whole idea is that you start with a paperclip, and there's a great TED talk on this. I wish I could give credit to the gentleman. I cannot remember his name, but he had started with a paperclip, and he had traded his way going, to strangers or whatever, and say, now I got a paperclip and I'd like to trade you for, whatever. And I think he traded up to maybe like a stapler, right? And he had taken that stapler to somebody else and said, hey, I will give you my stapler for a whatever. And so this gentleman from the TED Talk had gone all the way up to getting a house. So we've included that same challenge, and he did it within a relatively short amount of time. I'm talking a year or two from my memory. Go back and watch that TED Talk. It's a great TED Talk. So we've included that because I love, having these young men have to go out and introduce themselves and have these kind of conversations. And it's a weird conversation to have, especially if you're a middle school, student adolescent in the midst of all this, hormonal chaos, and you've got to go start these conversations. So, these young men have come back. I've got a young man in the program right now who has his very first truck as a 16-year-old, and he didn't pay a dime for it. He traded up starting from a paperclip. And
did he trade to his grandpa?
And these were strangers. So this wasn't a grandpa giving him the truck, and he worked his way up and ended up with a flat screen TV at one week, and so he, had to get really, really creative, and it brought him out of his shell of feeling like he was he kind of self-labeled as a shy person, but no longer feels that way. And so, they take on this, they take on public speaking, free labor, but labor for their community, and trying not to get caught doing it. Right. So you're
I love this idea. It's not
right?
labor. It's like a good deed, like a sneaky good deed or something.
Sneaky good deeds. Exactly.
Yes.
You're trying to do good things for people, but trying not to get caught. And then there's the reflection piece of, how did that feel? How did that feel to do something?
Wait, give an example. How can you do a good deed and not get caught? I open the door, you see me.
And so, some of the young men, one of the most common things that they'll do is they'll watch their neighborhood, and, a neighbor leaves, and they'll go, mow the lawn and go leave some gifts, and they'll go take care, right? And, do some things like that so that they don't get seen, and then come back. And then there's that reflection, because they can't tell the person that they were the ones that did it. So how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you really want credit for that? And what does that say? And we're not looking for a right answer or wrong answer. We just want that self-awareness. What does that feel like to do the right thing because it's the right thing, to help somebody else, but not get noticed that it was you too? Do you like it? Do you not? Why? And that's really what we're looking for, is that self-discovery. So, they're taking on some of these amazing projects and getting so much out of it, including job offers, which it's fun to see.
And give me an example of a job offer.
So we had a 15-year-old young man who interviewed a CEO of a financial services firm. And it was very interesting, because he had interviewed him, and the man had stayed in contact with him, and was just so impressed with what he was doing with the program. And in the same week, that young man reached out to me, as did another participant who wasn't going all in on all the projects. And he actually sends me, this young man was 19, in college, sends me his resume and says, "What's going on? I've sent this out to 100 different places, and I can't get hired. I really want to get hired with a financial industry, with a financial firm. And I'm just," he's got this very traditional looking resume. And I said, "Well, there's a reason we do this digital portfolio." So he's saying he's got 100, resumes that he's throwing out there and can't get hired. Our young man who did this interview with the CEO of the financial firm, and then showed his digital portfolio of all the other unrelated projects and challenges he's taken on, the CEO says to him, "Hey, I know you're 15. I can't legally hire you, but I'm going to pay you under the table. And I want to bring you in as many hours as you can.
We can't say his name.
All I want is, when you're 18, I want you to be able to work for me." Right. And
Wow.
so the tale of like somebody doing the traditional route, and then somebody else just, kind of taking on, again, projects, challenges, doing real world work that's transferable. And in the same week, I had those two, that juxtaposition, which was phenomenal to see.
God, it is, it seems obvious. And I think it would have been obvious until maybe 200 years ago in anywhere in the world, that of course, as a young person, you grow up, you do more in your community, you take on more adult responsibilities. You want to prove who you are. You want to get, the girl, you want to become the chief someday. And so you're always out there, becoming a better hunter or gatherer or whatever. And so, I'm interested in this too, bringing more real world to kids, and also recognizing them as young people, and not just students, and not just vulnerable little individuals who could get hurt no matter what we let them do. How do you get parents and schools, I guess, just how do you get other adults to not worry that what you're doing is dangerous or a waste of time?
Go for it, Chris.
Yeah, that's a hard one. One thing, the first that comes to mind is that I think we still carry kind of a collective sense of needing rites of passage, needing challenges. I think we've lost a lot of these, but not all of them. I'm thinking of like the tradition of the bar and bat mitzvah and the Jewish faith, and how, age 13 is this coming of age there, and in so many other cultures. And, in our culture at age 13, you're still asking for permission to go to the bathroom. So we have we've drifted quite away. But I think we still feel it. I think a lot of parents are open to being reminded that their kids need and deserve more independence, and always in balance with responsibility. You don't just get given freedoms for nothing, but you're given responsibility and independence at the same time. You're given chances to kind of earn it, to demonstrate. So frankly, I think a lot of parents need to be in community in order to do that. So another, I was talking about isolation of schools earlier. I think also families get really isolated. We end up in this nuclear family mode. We're taking everything on for ourselves. I think it's different when we're parents of young children, but by the time our kids get to be adolescents, a lot of parents have lost kind of that cohort of fellow moms or dads who they're sharing their ins and outs with, or it's become more superficial, like parking lot conversations. So I think because of that, we get more fearful. I don't really know if this is okay. I'm not sure if I'll get judged for letting my kid do this. Whereas if you are in a school or an education center or a community where, here are 10 or 50 or 100 parents, and we are creating a rite of passage together, there's safety in those numbers. We're kind of mutually reinforcing each other. It's like, okay, I think this is okay. You think this is okay.
Right. You're normalizing it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're normalizing. Right. So I think that's where, an unusual school can create that. Right. But it doesn't, Matt, to your point, I also get hesitant about the word school. That can really kind of put us in a box mentally. So it can be any group of people that recognize this and want to challenge their kids with something more.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I just have to say, I did a story once about how when people are on campgrounds, they give their kids all sorts of freedom and responsibility, even though these are people they don't know because it's a campground. But one of the things you said is when you're in middle school, you meet in the parking lot. And of course, then you're in your little car again with just your family. But if you're in a campground and everybody's outside and nobody has an organized activity to go to because you're not at your soccer league anymore, you're not at your piano lesson, you have all these kids, you have a group of people that has normalized it's okay to let our kids go outside. And they do. And I think that's what kids love about camping. Yes, fine, fun to be in a tent or an RV or whatever, but really it's just fun to be with a group of kids making something happen. And that is not, even a normal experience for most kids anymore. It's like, it's a vacation as opposed to regular. So Matt, what do you do in terms of getting buy-in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you guys are using the word normalize, and I love that. And I don't remember what the stat is, but it's something around 92% or something, of our population has gone through the public school system or a similar model, right? I call it just a conveyor belt school system, right? Because there's a lot of private schools that are doing the exact same thing as the public school model, right? And so that has become the norm. And so when you say school, that's what people think of. And I almost, relate it to a religion of sorts in our country. And so when you start talking about something that is different from that operates differently, it does trigger the fear because it is outside of the norm. It is not normal. So, I definitely take the approach on our campuses and in our community of, look, this is what I believe. This is what Acton believes. This is kind of how we operate. But I will not sell anybody on anything because I need to build a community of people that want this as the normal, right? They want to have this as the normal thing. They do believe, I love what you said, they believe that responsibility comes first and the freedom comes next. We've been taught, John Holt is very famous for saying, we've been taught not to trust children. And I've been
taught not to trust anyone,
not to trust anybody, right? Well, that's it. So you're taught not to trust children, and you're taught, you grow up with that mistrust all around you in our conventional schools. And so then in turn, you reciprocate that to the rest of the world. You don't trust anybody else either. And you certainly don't trust your own children, and the cycle perpetuates. And I think that's a scary, scary way to be. And ultimately it comes back to that judgment factor again, that you mentioned. And most people live in fear, primarily from what I found, they live in fear of other people's opinions, right? The way I prove to my friend Lenore that I'm a good parent is that I got to make sure I have that Harvard bumper sticker on my car that says I'm a Harvard parent. My kid goes to Harvard. That's how I can prove to Lenore and to Chris and all my friends that I'm a good parent, right? Because I'm really worried about that versus worried about who my young person actually is and unleashing the brilliance that's there. I'm worried about other people's opinions, and that's just it's a sad way to live, but it's the way most people live.
Well, actually, it is the way we live, and we do want to be part of a community and not seem like a total weirdo or a person endangering kids. That's why we're trying to change the laws so that it's legal to let your kids outside, so it doesn't look so strange that you actually get arrested or investigated. But the whole idea of Let Grow is to normalize childhood independence again, which is why we do it through the schools with like the Let Grow project. Because if all the third graders or if the entire school is doing the Let Grow project, then you start talking to the other parents. What did your kid do? Oh, my kid went to climb the climbing wall. Oh, my kid will go with yours tomorrow or whatever. So it's not terrible that we establish norms. We just want to change the norms and sort of roll them back. I mean, it's really not long ago in human history, even in American history, that kids were expected to be out and about. I mean, there's primers for parents, like your 6-year-old, of course, they can go to the grocery and walk to school. So I think we're all trying to renormalize kids being part of the real world and recognizing that without that, it's almost a little malnutrition in terms of growing up. You're growing up without one of the big building blocks of childhood, which is making your way, being scared, getting it wrong, then getting it right, helping out, maybe having some secrets. I'm worried that kids are tracked so much that there's no way that they can even have any kind of separate life from their family because their families know so much about what they're doing. Before we go to questions, I have my last question for you, which is like, tell me a couple of more of the projects that the kids can choose from, or that you suggest that the kids do, the young people do, that other people might be able to try, like either with their kids or with everybody at church or with everybody in the, even in the preschool. Is there something that or there's some other projects that you would recommend or that you've loved seeing the results of?
Yeah, I'll share one that just has been done so many times, and I love hearing these stories. I mentioned it briefly earlier, which is just the simple challenge of serving a good meal to someone. I'm thinking of talking to one girl in, I think, 7th grade, and she took on this challenge and described, that she had a friend over and they decided they were going to make, a complete meal for their families, an appetizer, main course, a dessert. And she and her friend hole up in the kitchen and, they're there for 3 or 4 hours,
Wow.
tinkering, maybe a small fire for a moment, figuring out all of the ways. Their parents are kind of, knocking on the door every now and then saying, we're hungry. And
we smell burning.
Yeah, exactly. And finally they produce this epic meal, all kinds of different cuisines and different dishes, and neither of them had ever cooked for anyone before. They just, received. And they just described that after that moment, they felt more grown up and their parents started treating them differently.
Yes.
Like, this person just fed me. My child just fed me. It's such a simple, elemental thing. So it's number one in the sequence of these essential experiences, because it is so fundamentally human. When your child can make you good food and enjoys that and surprises themselves even, it can kind of turn a corner. So that's one of my favorites.
I have to interrupt my own self before you come in, Matt, and tell you a story from the beginning of COVID. I was interviewing some mom who was living in Virginia, and she was talking about how before COVID, her daughter was in 1st grade, and every morning she would like, come on, Jennifer, you got to wake up, Jennifer. And then she'd go away, and then she'd come back, and Jennifer's still like, Jennifer, come on, you got to get up. Oh my God, the bus is coming. Hurry up already. The bus wasn't coming. She had a driver. And, Jennifer would drag herself out of bed, and the mom would go downstairs and like frantically, get out a bowl and put the cereal in and put the milk in so that Jennifer could just sort of go there and do this and leave. Because otherwise, part of the problem was just time pressure. You got to get to school at a certain time. Mom had to get to her job at a certain time. And so the mom catered to the kid, simple as that, which I can understand because I've done that myself. You got to get out the door, you do it for them. But then along came COVID, and suddenly the mom didn't have to get to work at a certain time. And at the very beginning, there was not even the remote schooling. So it was just an empty day. And to her mother's surprise, but no longer ours, since I'm sort of ruining the story by saying, guess what? The daughter started getting up before the mom, and she would go downstairs, and sure enough, she would find her clothes and she would make breakfast for herself. And then she started getting like the toast ready for her mom, and she would butter the toast, and she would make the coffee, and then she would have it, and you'd get out the yogurt and the banana and have breakfast for the mom. And it's obviously she was capable of that the entire time, right? And there was there was just no way to see it. I always think of it as like there's a seed, but until it germinates, you can't tell what's in there. And we've packed the ground pretty hard, with the permafrost of, no, I'm going to do it for you. We have a schedule. You have to do the 20 minutes of reading. I got to sign your reading log. There's an assignment. And it's like, you step back. I mean, one of our million slogans at Let Grow is when adults step back, kids step up. And at the very beginning of COVID, it was that. And it sounds like that's what you're doing the whole time, especially like Chris, when you're saying you guys have to figure out your own field trip and how you're going to get there and what you're going to pay for and how you're going to get back and what you're going to do on it. And we don't even allow ourselves the joy of seeing how competent and brilliant and clever and sometimes maybe even conniving our kids can be, right? If we just say, you guys got to do this. So Matt, any more stories like this? I just want people to be going away going like, yes, kids can do this. Here's a story.
That's it, man. They are so dang capable. And just to add something on real quick, teenager wasn't even a word until the 1940s. Really wasn't even a word. We've since made it a word to try to give this weird little sense of a weird time period where you can kind of take it off as a human being. No, they're ridiculously capable of handling things far before those teen years, and so that's it. I love that story of cooking the meals, and we do the same thing, and making the field trips. We have students that will create escape rooms and then run all of our parents through their escape rooms that they've created.
Or lock them in forever.
Right. Or lock them in forever. Absolutely. Intentionally. Or even something as simple as putting on a community event. If our students want to dance, they want a prom of some sort, cool. They organize and create the entire thing. Right. They want the field trip. Great. Organize and create the entire thing. They want to do a play. Awesome. They build the props, create the costumes, write the script, do the AV and lighting, sell the tickets, market the play, and they put on a production. Right. And so it's it doesn't have to be anything that's crazy. The point is that they take the responsibility to do it, and so we do all of those things along with starting businesses. And I love that you talk about camping. We do survival, a survival quest where they learn to start fires and build shelters and what kind of food they can get. And then they, go out with the parents, and the kids will race which teams can build the fire fastest, which teams can build the best shelter, which teams that, put up the tents, and they take on that responsibility. And again, the beauty is in seeing, you see that they know how capable they are. But the beauty for me too is seeing the other adults go, oh my gosh, okay, that's right. They're amazing individuals, and
they're us. They're just a little younger. And the way you get to be us is by doing things.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's so interesting about the play. I mean, because you're just saying, like, if you're making the costumes and the set and you're writing it, I mean, those are all these skills that we want them to do. There's math, there's persistence, there's paying attention if you're making a costume.
Communication. Yep. All of it.
Yeah. And selling is math again, and promotion. I mean, if you're good at social media, we'll hire you.
That's right. That's right.
That's something else. Wait, so here we have a question.
Before you jump into the questions, just a quick additional thought on that.
Yeah.
You touched on something super important, that a lot of it, I think, is about time pressure, and the time pressure we feel and then impose on them. Back to that cooking story, it took them 3 or 4 hours to make dinner because they just never done it before.
Sure.
And so often I hear parents holding their kids back from independence because they don't have time for them to mess up. I don't want you to walk to school today because if you take a wrong turn, you're going to be late. Or it's great that you want to make dinner, but I got to get on the table in the next 10 minutes and I don't have time for that. So I just think it's a good kind of noticing for us as parents. When you hear yourself stopping your kid because of time, we're probably getting in their way. And if we can relax about that, or create spaces where they can be out of clock time for a little while, like the camping trip, that might be
right. It's stepping out of time. Ironically, often they're running off to, soccer practice or Kumon or something to be in some other organized activity where an adult will tell them what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the first question. It says, schools recently are more locked down than ever. Few in-person events or volunteers allowed. A side effect is that I can't get introductions to the other parents and families. My daughter brought me some email addresses for friends' parents, but my son won't do that. The boy problem. How to foster community with other families when the school is so locked off. Oh, that's so sad. Any suggestions?
I mean, there's a million ways to foster, opportunities. I obviously don't know who you are, where you are, what you're comfortable with. But if you're not seeing these people on a day-to-day, from the school side, nor to the emails, I mean, there's Facebook groups, there's you've got local dance studios and martial arts gyms, and just get out in the community. If you're involved in a church group, if you're involved, just get out anywhere that you're going to see people and start introducing yourself. I mean, you'd be surprised how small the world is. I met a guy, yesterday who had just reached out and seen something on social media, and come to find out he doesn't live too far from where we are. And so now we're getting our families together. He's got kids that are the same age as mine, and they're going to go out and play on the ranch. Like it's just get out there as much as humanly possible. I don't know if that's the answer that person's looking for.
The other answer is have a ranch.
Right?
Also, people will come to you.
Yeah,
right?
totally. Yeah.
Have a really fun 40 acres.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, also have an event. I mean, even if you have a block party, or if you stand in front of the school with chalk, there's weirdo ways to get people involved too. Just you can stand there and hand things out. I mean, maybe if your kids are in middle school, it will mortify them, but they can hand them out.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Don't
Yeah,
ask
some kind of, the answer that comes to mind for me, similar to what you're saying, Matt, is just some kind of shared experience or shared adventure. We as parents, like I was saying earlier, we really need other parents, particularly as our kids are getting older and they're going to challenge us in different ways for all good natural developmental reasons. So if we can create a chance where, parents can have a chance to talk about what it's like to be a parent of whatever age group this person is in, or where they can create an experience for their kids. It could be anything from, we want to go on a bigger field trip. And so we're going to have a car wash event and get everybody together on a Saturday, and the parents can hang out and the kids will do the car washes and make the money and the tips. Or, there are so many low-hanging fruit experiences that we can help to create. And I think that's also just a natural convening point. Then you have something to talk about, you look back on.
Right, it's so much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to run a class on how to start volunteering. And it was really, I was just hoping that all sorts of single people would come and do these things, because if you're making the sandwiches for the homeless, it's much easier to start chatting with the cute guy next to you than if you're at a party, or at a bar. So yeah, something to do. But then of course, get the parents away from the kids. It's the other thing, because otherwise they'll just watch and help and assist and suggest.
Exactly.
Okay, question 2. Where do we find the balance between letting the kids figure something out and learn from failure versus giving them instruction so that you're not setting them up for failure? Yeah. Okay. I'm so happy to be the moderator and not the answerer. So you guys get to answer.
Yeah, that's it's so situational. One of the things that I always tell parents, though, is kids will do what you do before they do what you say.
Yeah. More is caught than taught.
More is caught than taught, right?
Yeah.
So, you being the example first and foremost and consistently is going to be one of those things. And really, I try not to, unless there is some sort of immediate physical danger, or on the rare occasion where there is a massive time crunch, I want to stay out. And I want to let them dive in and figure it out and get frustrated. And then, if they come to me for advice or asking questions, and then I want to try to return that's a really good question. So how are you thinking about it right now? What are the challenges you're facing? What have you tried? What hasn't worked? What other things are you thinking about? Where can we figure out answers to this? Right. And I want to just kind of join in on the thought process, but I want to let them struggle until they come in and ask me to just guide them along the thought process. Because what you'll find is more often than not, 99% of the time, you can jump in like that, asking good questions. And that's going to spark something that's going to lead them to the answer without you having to explicitly tell them, here's what to do. Right. And then those are lessons that last.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I think so much depends on the context of, are these kids who have already been trained to be passive, or they've been in traditional schools and they're just waiting to receive instructions, and so we're trying to untrain them? Or are they kids who, they've been in that kind of environment, and if they've already been in an environment where they're active, I think it depends almost more on personality. There are kids by nature who want to go research and absorb everything first, and there are kids who are going to start tinkering the moment you're done saying, whatever prompts.
Go make it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's great. I think that's one of the reasons why project teams are so fruitful as a vehicle for learning experiences, that you'll intentionally mix and match them. So you've got the tinkerer, you've got the planner, and let them try different roles.
The soldier, the spy.
Different teams. Yeah, exactly. So, but generally, yeah, Matt, I totally agree. It's, if we impose instructions on them in details, that's going to make them passive, full stop.
Oh, I just have to tell you about this cool experiment. So I was just interviewing an anthropologist who has spent a lot of time with indigenous communities in Mexico and someplace else. And there was a study done where they took 2 kids from an indigenous community, and a bunch of them in twos, and they brought them in a room and they said to the kid number 2, I'm going to teach you how to do something in a minute. I just want to show the first kid how to make an origami animal. And what they were really testing is how much attention kid number 2 was paying when she was told, this isn't for you. I'm going to talk to you later. I'll directly instruct you later. And then they did the same thing in San Francisco. Sorry, Chris. I know that's where you are. And I think you can guess the kids in San Francisco who'd been grown up like, is this going to be on the test? Is this not going to be on the test? Didn't pay any attention when they were told this isn't for you. And they couldn't figure out how to do the origami animal because it was for somebody else. And so what you're saying is, if you sort of have to get used to the idea of, you better be paying attention to the world and not just direct instruction and not just some adults telling you exactly what to do, because that is how you're going to learn. So it sounds like certainly all the real world experiences that kids have, that those are the real world. There isn't a teacher saying, this is how you catch the A train. This is how much you pay for a ticket. This is you figuring it out. And people like to be active. I mean, we all talk about active learning, right? Isn't there a phrase like that? Active learning, or he who's doing is doing the learning. So getting them out and having them figure out problems without you immediately helping is a great thing. In the indigenous communities, by the way, the anthropologist I was talking to studied how much time is spent by the adult and how much time adults spend in direct teaching of kids, like this is how you do it. And guess how much time they spend per day doing that? How much direct instructions the kids get per day? Take a guess.
5 minutes.
Yeah, I was gonna say not a whole lot, man. Not a whole lot.
Right. It's 90 seconds there. Okay. Question. Why are we so afraid of failure for our kids? And maybe setting kids up for a little bit of failure will build resilience.
Yeah. Why? I mean, so one of the reasons I fully think one of the reasons we're so afraid of failure, yes, you got the media outlets, which, Lenore, you speak to better than anybody, on the fear that's perpetuated in the media, but school is a huge part of that because you're taught not to fail.
Right. Taught to get good grades.
Anybody on here that's got kids, think about when your kids were learning to walk, right? Your kids stood up and they took that first, kind of step, and they were holding onto the couch or whatever, and then they fall down, right? Did you as a parent go, you suck, you can't walk, oh my God.
You got an F.
Right, you got an F. No, you went, yes, and you cheered them on. You supported the failure. And so they went, oh, okay, cool. And they stood up and they did it again, and they fell again, and you cheered again. You supported the failure. And in their early development, developing brain, they went, oh, okay, cool. I'm doing something right with this failure that's eventually going to lead to success.
Wow.
That's the way things work. But then we get to school and all of a sudden it's like, whoa. No. Failure is not okay. And not only is it not okay, you've got to do this exact same thing, the exact same time as everybody else. Otherwise, we're going to say things like you're behind, or you're struggling, or you're right. And we start to train people very early on that failure is not okay. School's a big culprit of that.
Wow.
Totally agreed. I think so much about the problem with school is that it's an example, traditional schools, of unhealthy competition. It's a competition where you did not consent to join. You're being judged by someone who's probably not objective. You don't often have the chance to go back and improve, a score once it's done. And it's publicly displayed often, even if not officially, it gets seen. Right. So those are kind of, all the wrong ways to do competition. Competition can be really healthy. When we choose to do it, when you get good feedback, when you recognize that you're growing, when you have many different ways to display skill, not just only one form, GPA or otherwise. So I think if you want something badly, like a toddler learning how to walk, and I have one who just learned how to walk, you will persevere through that, and it doesn't matter to you, or you'll let yourself have emotions and pick back up again. When you've been forced into a competition you never necessarily wanted to be in, then you'll have a totally different relationship with failure.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny talking about school that way, because of course I was fine at school, but if school had been soccer, I would have just had this life of like thinking, God, I'm so terrible. I'm so slow. I'm so bad. I'm so dumb, because I would have been forced into that competition and lost.
Right.
So
That's
it's
it.
interesting. I'm thinking about that with my own kids now. All right. I think we have time for one more question, 12:55. How do you recommend introducing this to younger kids? My boys are 7-year-old twins, and I want this approach for them, but they're still afraid of going downstairs by themselves or walking into a dark room. And then I'll tell you a story about a kid who was also afraid of walking down the stairs by himself. But you guys go first. How do you get kids less afraid?
Yeah, I go to that same place of what do they really want to do? Chances are they have some big plans, dreams, projects. Maybe they want to, start a business, or cook a meal, just to think of some of the things we've been talking about, or a million other things. Where is there already intrinsic motivation? And start with that. Don't do it for them, but make space for it. Help clear time, maybe provide some exposure to someone who's been doing that, who is, if it's a 7-year-old, maybe someone who's just a couple years older. So
That's so true. Not just adults. Adults are
not
like
just adults.
Giant Megatrons, they have nothing to do with kids. Yeah.
It's not relatable, I think, for the average 7-year-old, but a 9-year-old doing that would be an awesome example, or even another 7-year-old. So I would start there. And as they start realizing they can pursue interest and tinker and have some success with that, then more things will open.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, man. I think it's as they do have successes in things, again, it's praising the effort and letting them understand their victories. And again, praising the effort, not the outcome, right? Praising the effort that they were brave enough to try something and go, man, I love the way you jumped off that rock. I love the way that was so brave, the way you did this. Like, put it in their head, that, hey, you guys are actually, you're brave human beings, right? You speak that into them so that they, start to believe that. But I love what he said there too, is that positive peer pressure of another kid who's just a little bit older, maybe the same age, maybe, my 11-year-old daughter there were some things that she didn't do until her now 9-year-old sister did them first, right? And it was like, oh my gosh, my younger sister is doing this.
Right.
Well,
nipping at her heels.
No way I'm going to be afraid of this anymore, because that's ridiculous. I'm not going to get shown up, and so, those things are big. And then, I'm big on talking I talk to my kids like they are adults and wildly capable, because they are. And I'll tell them, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm a little bit afraid of this, and this is kind of the way I'm thinking about it, but I'm going to go ahead and get after it too. When they see that that's a normal thing, but that you're willing to embrace it, understand it, talk about it, and do something anyways, then that becomes normal for them too. I think all those things are beneficial.
Right. The caught then taught thing. I'm going to jump in because I have to tell my little story, which is at a school that was doing the Let Grow project. One of the teachers actually had a son who was afraid to go up or downstairs in their own house without the mom or the dad. And then they told him about, okay, so this is a project and you have to do something on your own. And his project was to make pancakes. So it was back to food. And then that was it. He made pancakes. But then like the next day, she was like, I can't remember his name, Johnny, where are you? And Johnny was upstairs. And without him realizing it, he had gone upstairs on his own, just because there was this little bit of a crack in the fear, because he was starting to feel just a little more competent and just a little more grown up. And so the idea is that, your competence generalizes too. And that's what we've been talking about this whole time. When you can make your way in the real world, it opens up who you are, what you're interested in, and how much you can do. So I thank you guys both for thinking outside the box, trusting kids, and coming up with great ideas that frankly do remind me of the Let Grow project. And the other thing is the Let Grow Play Club, where kids play of mixed ages, kids play together at school, before or after school, without an adult organizing them. Because one of the things you were just mentioning too is just the value of having kids slightly older, slightly younger, because they'll inspire each other way more than, good old us. So thank you. And I'll hand it over to Andrea.
Thanks, everyone. This has been fascinating. I feel like the chat that's been going on has been very interesting and branched out into what to me is everything that Let Grow does. I'm not sure exactly at this point how many of you on this were familiar with Let Grow or joined the webinar because you were intrigued by Matt and Chris. So if you're not familiar with Let Grow, please visit letgrow.org. We'll send you some links. We have the Independence Kit with the projects that Lenore mentioned for younger kids, because we believe that you've got to start this as young as you can. And that's what we are really all about. We are about making it easy, normal, and legal to give students or kids the independence they need to grow up to be confident, capable, and happy adults. We also work with some legislation. We had one question about being able to leave kids out to do some of these things on their own, and people calling the cops and things like that. We actually have an archived webinar you can see on that as well. So at this point, I'm going to close this off. Do know that we will send out an email for everybody, and would love to hear back from you. If you have more ideas, we'll include any information for reaching out to Chris or Matt. I'm sure they've got Twitter handles and all of those wonderful things. So we'll share all of that with you. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.